In this video, I'm going to talk about how crazy some Russian propaganda can be. And I'm going to start with some things that are pretty moderate, like looking, like just making a claim to what's projected on Kremlin state TV. Okay, so this is an actual clip from a propaganda show. And he's saying, so in order to finish off T, that's anybody who's opposed to the Russians in Ukraine, that means you, if you're watching this and you care about Ukraine, in a toilet. I don't know why they always talk about toilets either. Sometimes you have to demolish a 12-story building. Okay, so if you're to get rid of supporters of Ukraine, you can just destroy a 12-story building. Okay, we'll work our way up to that one. Let's look at a few other things. Like there's some crazy clampdowns in Russia. In Sverdlovsk, a young man is facing up to a decade in prison because he looked up something about some Ukrainian topic, and now he is in court. I talked about this the other day, and I talked about this the other day too. Internet access in Russia will soon require a passport. And by 2026, Russians may be required to log in through a government portal, and the result will be a unified database showing who watches what content. What could go wrong there, right? So they're clamping down in Russia, but they also are doing things like this. I showed this the other day as well. I'm going to get the things that I didn't show in a moment, just by the way. So I'm going to show that shortly. Just give me a moment. Another apparent example of a Russian psych op targeting conservative U.S. audience in this video, masked man claiming to be Ukrainian, speaking with exaggerated, unnatural accents, threatened Charlie Kirk's widow, right? Hey, he said things about Ukraine, and he did. He wasn't a big fan of Ukraine, and they knock his head off in this thing, and then I'm sure it's going to be spreading through conservative or Republican media in order, and that's the effect that they're trying to get to, right? I mean, that's what they're going for. Okay. Then we see things like this. Now, this one's a little bit more believable than this, although some people are going to still believe it, right? This is easily debunked. They didn't sound like they had Ukrainian accents. Okay. But this one looks a little bit more believable. They'll say things like Russian propaganda machine continues working overtime. This time they're spreading fake that supposedly President Zelensky's awarding soldiers with SS symbolism, SS like the Nazis, on their patches. As was first explained here, these are not SS insignia. These are 2 4s. Okay, this is the SS, right? That's what we see, or a variant that looks like this. This is Nazi SS. But what's on the patch here are not this. It's 4-4. Now you can see that once you see that, right? Once you start to look, you're like, oh yeah, that's 44 or 4-4, and that's what this symbol is for. Okay. These are 2 4s, designation of the 4th Battalion of the 4th Brigade of the National Guard, Ruzba. The patch is official, Rubez. The patch is official, used by the National Guard. Russian propaganda is so short-sighted it can't distinguish historical symbols from unit numbers, but continues to look for Ukrainian Nazis. They're everywhere, and that'll spread as well. Okay. Then you see kind of just dopey, historically inaccurate things like this that a middle school history teacher would easily debunk. Okay, 108th anniversary of the Bolshevik-led October Revolution, 25 achievements of the Soviet Union. Rapidly industrialized from an agrarian society into the world's 2nd largest economy via 5-year plans. No, they did that by imperially taking over their neighbors and forcing them at gunpoint to become part of this thing. By the way, this 5-year plan thing never really worked out so hot. If you think about the 5-year plans, there was always lying and cheating around the edges of the 5-year plan. We didn't actually produce what we did, but we said we did, and it wasn't actually there. When I was in a former Soviet satellite country, or actually it was a former Soviet country, they had a joke that the 5-year plan was completed in 4 years with 3 teams of 2 people on 1 paycheck. Okay, so yeah. Electrified rural Russia. Okay, let's give them that. Expanded the Trans-Siberian Railway to over 900 kilometers. A good economist will say, well, what did you do with the resources that you didn't do this with? But okay, rebuilt post-World War II economy faster than any nation, despite losing 27 million lives. Okay, first, you lost all these lives because you were bad at military. I mean, you killed off, Stalin killed, kind of thought that he was in league with the Nazis early on, and so that 27 million lives didn't have to be lost. Eradicated famine through collectivized agriculture. That's just not true. I mean, if you look at famine and that sort of thing, in the 1970s and 1980s, the U.S. was selling agriculture to Russia because they just couldn't sustain without it. Right? That's what was still going on. Provided economic aid to over 100 developing nations. Well, with strings attached. Launched Sputnik 1. I'll give you that. Sent Yuri Gagarin as the first human into space. Give you that too. Turned the tide of World War II by defeating Nazi forces at the Battle of Stalingrad in 1943. Again, this is like the earlier one where it's just at least 478,741 killed or missing, with total casualties from the Battle of Stalingrad. Like that's what that. But it's partly because of incompetence and partly because of bad training or bad forethought. Like your job as a leader is to see into the future and try to prepare for what's going to happen. And they didn't really do that. Boosted literacy from under 30 to near 100% through universal free education, through universal free propaganda. Yes, the education is there, but the education is there for propaganda purposes to make you into good Soviets who think that communism is everything, right? And the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Okay, and basically they're rehabbing the image of Stalin and Lenin. It's really bizarre to watch. Well, Branislav Slanchev, he's a professor at University of California, San Diego. He's having none of that. Just when you thought that this, and he's talking about Twitter or X, could not get any worse, it swamps my entire timeline with posts glorifying the communist coup of 1917, the greatest calamity that befell humanity since the Black Death. He might be right about that. I mean, think about this. Putin talks about it like the greatest, the worst thing that's ever happened is the fall of the Soviet Union. That's not it. The worst thing that happened was the Soviet Union. Like what they did and what the ripple effect for the Soviet Union was catastrophic. Okay, let's look at this. Did you know that had it not been for the communists, there would have been no Nazis coming to power in Germany either? Okay, so it's counterfactual. You can't necessarily say this, but let's just speculate. Let's follow his train of thought. The Nazis were a reaction. Oh, no. They were a reaction to the terrible Paris Peace Accords from World War I. Yeah, they were. But they were also competitors with the with the Soviets, with the communists. And so when you had, say, the Reichstag fire, they blamed it on the communists and then stripped out essentially basically half of the equivalent of the U.S. Bill of Rights in the Enabling Act. I did my master's thesis on what happened in Nazi Germany. So they did that because the competitor was the communists and they were taking over, like they were trying to push them out and be the power there. So there's something to his argument here. And so no World War II, no Holocaust, no Cold War, no. Okay, so I can't necessarily say no World War II or Holocaust. Maybe Hitler would have, done what Hitler would have done, but no Cold War. Interesting. Think about that. No Cold War, no Red China, no Communist China, no killing fields in Cambodia, no North Korea. It's fascinating what everything that was downstream from this communist coup in 1917. He might be right. It was the greatest calamity. Okay, so here are propagandists. Attention, United Kingdom. Russian propagandists claim that the British royal family is allegedly preparing a tea attack connected with Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Okay. Quote, then they will incite this in the media, accuse Russia of these things, and thereby further escalate this conflict. What does this tell us? The crown, not the prime ministers who change like socks, is our main enemy. They make mischief in a subtle and targeted way, the propagandists say. Okay, by the way, what just happened was Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The power lines were down. It was running on generators for some time. They had to broker a ceasefire. And so for the first time, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has been reconnected to the backup power line. So the repairs were finally completed just yesterday, November 8th. So isn't that ironic that this guy was just talking about this on November 8th? Okay. And then today, or well, yesterday as well, Russia deliberately targeted power substations linked to the Klemensky and Rivne nuclear power plants last night. These are not random strikes. There are calculated attacks on Russia's or on Europe's nuclear safety. Ukraine demands emergency IAEA board meeting to address these escalating threats. Yeah, so they're potentially cutting off power to nuclear power plants, which would cause a calamity. And while they're talking about this, it's just amazing. Kremlin propagandists are stubbornly refusing to stop grandstanding and furious at their failures on the Ukrainian front. They haven't really made much progress. I showed you that this morning. Go back to that video if you haven't seen it. They claim that the army, which failed to capture the 50,000-strong city of Pokrovsk over 14 months, will, if necessary, strike the coastlines of the United States and France and the United Kingdom and other countries with sham nuclear-armed torpedo Poseidon, causing massive devastation. Yeah, that's what they're talking about these days. Like, that's what they spend their time talking about. It's fascinating. Okay, this guy's a piece of work. The comment here was, who, apart from Russian propagandists, can manage to combine projection and admission of guilt in a single sentence? When European gunpowder factories explode, it's supposedly because someone lit a cigarette nearby the wrong way. Okay, let's read what this guy had to say here. The Western community supports Ukraine in this war because, from their point of view, Ukraine's the victim. Accordingly, from a legal standpoint, all sites in the world that are directly or indirectly connected with Ukraine's enemy are considered legitimate targets for Ukraine. So it's not just Russia. That's awesome. But they are located in Europe. They're in Africa. It's not our private company. Now, listen, they keep forgetting that this is a mirror situation. Okay, he's going to make his point. We are conducting a special military operation against Ukraine. In response, Ukraine carries out T-strikes on the Russian Federation. And so they should be able to go after them. As we promised long ago, we usually kill the T in toilets. A toilet, and again, I don't know why they keep talking about toilets, but they love talking about toilets. A toilet can be located in any building in Europe, in America, and so forth. And so in order to finish off T in a toilet, you sometimes have to demolish a 12-story building. I'm not kidding. He just said that. In order to finish off T in a toilet, you sometimes have to demolish a 12-story building. So it's justified to do anything to go after enemies of Russia, which are necessarily T. You know what I'm saying when I say T, right? Because I don't pronounce this particular word because I'm trying to not run afoul of YouTube. Yeah, you have to sometimes destroy a 12-story building. So Europeans really live in paradise, but they think they're protected by a roof. So he's threatening all Europeans here. And then when their gunpowder facilities explode, it's supposedly because someone lit a cigarette in the wrong way. Wait a minute, that's the excuse that the Russians were coming up with to deny that the Moscow was actually hit. It was just or whatever it was. It's just amazing to watch. Vladimir Solovyov had what's close to a Freudian slip. Vladimir Solovyov couldn't get any help from his editorial team and casually wondered whether they're all dead. Was it hit by a strike? Did everyone die? Like, in the back of his mind, he has to know that Russia's being targeted and he might be targeted. And then there was this thing of Putin dipping this pen in imaginary ink. It was weird, right? He's putting that in there. No, what? It's a ballpoint pen. Like, yeah, I'm not sure what exactly was in his mind here, but he's dipping in imaginary ink, ballpoint pen. So there are propagandists coming out saying, well, Putin probably wanted to close his pen and then change his mind. Yeah, you've got to contort yourself to think that that's what was going on. He was going to close his pen. No, he's clearly looking like he's dipping something. Yeah. Anyway, so that's how propagandists have to twist themselves and contort themselves. Okay, I'll leave you with this. What do average Russians really think about Putin? There's two key takeaways. First, propaganda works. The only thing that would threaten domestic support for Putin's regime and its fascist imperialism would be defeat. That's it. You just got to do that. And then second, sanctions don't really work. Weak sanctions only serve to promote resentment. Only Ukraine's kinetic sanctions are having an effect, and that's what they have to do more of. Okay, my friends, tell me what you thought about what you saw here. Was this helpful? Did this help you understand more of how they think and how they process? If so, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing. Thank you for the time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.